Okay, I want to start by saying something that might surprise you. Food tracking gets a really bad reputation, and people say that it's restrictive, it causes anxiety, and I understand why, because when it's done wrong, it absolutely can. But when it's done right, tracking is one of the most freeing things that you can do. It actually reduces your mental load around eating and gives you more flexibility around eating in general. And it's one of the core reasons that my clients stop obsessing over food and start living their actual lives. Today, I'm going to show you the science behind why that's actually true, and specifically these two targets that protein and fiber are the ones that are actually going to change everything for you when it comes to tracking. If you've watched my first and second episode on YouTube so far, you already understand how your metabolism adapts to stress and under eating and what chronic cortisol can do for your body. In this episode, we have a little bit more practical education on what to actually eat and how it makes your life actually easier and not harder. So tracking actually gives you your life back, okay? The real problem isn't tracking, it's that you have too many decisions, okay? And too many decisions equals decision fatigue. In episode 2, we talked about decision fatigue in the context of stress, and here's how it's actually going to start showing up with your food, okay? So when you have too many decisions are going to lead to depletion, and depletion then leads to defaulting to whatever is easiest. And this is where we believe we lack willpower and discipline, right? So we think that because we're defaulting to our past behaviors, we don't have enough discipline, we don't have enough willpower, we just need to get back on track. The problem is not that you're defaulting, it's that you have too many decisions, then you end up being depleted, which is why you get to defaulting. So if we can solve the root issue, right? Reducing the amount of decisions and the decision fatigue, then we stop defaulting and thus we don't need willpower. I'll cite my sources in the description of this video, but the average person makes over 200 food-related decisions a day. What you eat, how much you eat, when to eat, what's healthy, does this fit my goals, do I have the salad, should I have the sandwich, what's for dinner, is there time to cook, on and on and on and on and on. And every single one of those decisions costs cognitive energy, right? By the time you get to dinner, you're running on empty. When you're depleted, your brain defaults to the easiest, most familiar, and most immediately rewarding option. And that's why we go through the drive-thru on the way home, or you order the DoorDash and the 9 p.m. pantry raid happens because you're starving from what you ate from the drive-thru, right? Because you have nothing left to make a thoughtful decision with. And then the irony is that people actually avoid tracking because they think it adds more decisions, more thinking, more calculated, more stress. And that is true if you are doing it reactively. If you are just eating throughout your day and then trying to log everything that you ate at the end of the day, yes, that is going to be exhausting. But imagine instead of Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, you're thinking about what to eat and you're making a decision on what to eat and then you're eating and then you're tracking it, right? So right now, the way you're doing it is decision on what to eat, decision to eat, decision to track, boom, 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 compounding over the whole week. But imagine if we did tracking the right way, there should really only be 1, maybe 2 days that you're making decisions on what you're eating, right? So what I mean by this is ideally we have 1 day where we're making thoughtful decisions for the entire week. So for me personally, it's Thursday or Friday. I make a decision on meal planning for the whole week, okay? And then that takes care of every single decision Monday through Sunday, okay? And then maybe sometimes if I want to add a little bit of flexibility, I won't plan my snacks and I'll just have that be where I fill in my cravings or whatever I want for flexibility for that day, right? But if you take 1 day to make all of the decisions, you're actually reducing the amount of decisions that you're making and you're just executing on a plan that you've taken now 1 day. You already know what you're having. You already know that it fits. There's no more decisions to make. So in fact, instead of doing 200 times 7, 1,500, I think, decisions per week, now we're making decisions on 1 day and then just executing the rest of the day. So we find 1 day that we have the mental capacity to do it. Boom, you're done. Executed. Now you're just executing the plan and you're reducing your decision fatigue by a big percentage that I can't do right in this moment. So this is actually, tracking is not more mental load, it's actually less. And the women that I work with, when they make this shift consistently, they totally agree. They stop thinking about food all day. The food noise starts to get a little bit more quiet because the question of what am I going to eat has already been answered. Of all the nutrition targets that people talk about, right, there's two that are very important. Protein is the first one that I want to go over, okay? So protein is incredibly important, and typically the recommended dose is 0.8 to 1 gram per pound of body weight, okay? I want to talk though about what protein actually does to your body and why it is so critical. Most women are dramatically under eating on protein. Like literally go back and track yesterday's food, and I bet you were probably eating less than 100 grams of protein, okay? But if you weigh 150 pounds or more, at minimum, you should be eating 120 grams of protein plus per day. When women come to me, I often find that they're eating anywhere from 60 to 80 grams of protein per day. And that gap from 60 to 80 to 120 plus is pretty substantial. But what's really important, what I need you to remember, is I don't want you to find out that you eat 60 grams of protein a day and that you should be eating 120. Okay, tomorrow I'm going to start eating 120, because you're never going to sustain that, right? That's why we go through an incredibly slow implementation process. If you find out that you're only eating 60 grams of protein a day next week, and for the 2 weeks after, I need it to be 14 days worth, okay? I need you to try to be 85% consistent with getting at least 70 grams of protein in, okay? And then you go 80 grams of protein per day, et cetera, until you get to where you want to be. This is a slow implementation process that actually makes it possible to make slow, sustainable changes that actually work in your life, okay? So let's talk about the science behind when we close this gap and we actually start eating more protein. So when it comes to protein, the big one is going to be satiety. It's the fact that your body is feeling more full, okay? So when you eat significant portions of protein, your body is going to feel more full. It releases hormones, which signals to your brain that you're actually feeling full, because it suppresses the ghrelin, which is our hunger hormone. And when protein is low, those signals are weaker and hunger comes back faster and stronger, okay? When protein is adequate, you stay fuller for longer on the same number of calories, right? This is one of the main reasons my clients can often eat more food, more volume, more variety of food, because once we get the protein right, the fullness response is way stronger and the urge to keep eating or having cravings start to diminish. Number 2 is going to be the thermic effect. The thermic effect of food is incredibly important. Protein is incredibly metabolically expensive. So what that means is that by eating more protein, our body has to break it down, and there's a larger process to break it down, which then means that we're burning more calories literally simply by eating more protein, okay? Protein supports fat loss without dropping total calories, because the energy that's available from protein can be more meaningful than other calories. And the third one, okay, is going to be muscle preservation. And the reason that it's super important to preserve our muscles, especially when we are in a calorie deficit, is because muscle is also metabolically expensive. So what that means is when you're in a calorie deficit, your body needs to get energy from somewhere. And if protein is low, it's actually going to break down your current muscle tissue. If protein is adequate, it'll protect that muscle tissue. And muscle matters enormously because it's metabolically active. It's actually burning calories just by existing. The more muscle you preserve during a fat loss phase, the more food you can eat during the fat loss phase and after the fat loss phase is over as well. This is why women who crash diet and don't have adequate amounts of protein and just, fast or do whatever they need to do to restrict all of their calories and just focus on the total calories, often find that it is way harder to lose weight over time because they've lost muscle, and so now their metabolism has downregulated and they now eat less. Now their calorie deficit has to be greater and their maintenance calories are going to be smaller too. Beyond all of this though, protein also supports our recovery from workouts, stress, and different things that are going to cause our body to have a stress response. It stabilizes blood sugar, which reduces energy crashes. It supports neurotransmitter production, which has a direct impact on our mood and our cognitive function. Getting protein right is not just a body composition strategy, okay? It's actually a quality of life improvement. Then the other target that's incredibly important to talk about is fiber, okay? Most women also undereat. Actually, most of the population typically undereats on fiber. The recommended intake for women is somewhere between 25 to 30 grams a day, but depending on the person, I like for that number to be closer to 10 to 15 grams per 1,000 calories that they're eating. The average American woman only gets 15 grams of fiber. Again, that gap between currently eating 15 grams of fiber to going to 25 to 30, when something like a handful of raspberries only has 4 grams of fiber, but then a whole bowl of pasta also only has 4 grams of fiber, it's going to be very challenging to go from here to here without adequately tracking and looking at your overall nutrition intake. We can get in the weeds, but what I need you to understand is there's two different types of fiber. There's soluble and insoluble fiber. So what it does, it actually helps you stabilize your blood sugar because it slows down digestion, which means steadier blood sugar, fewer energy spikes, and fewer energy crashes, and fewer cravings for quick fixes, more sustainable energy across the day. When blood sugar is stable, that food noise, again, that constant background thinking about food dramatically reduces, right? This isn't willpower magically kicking into play, okay? This is a biochemical shift that happens when you feed your body what it actually needs. The number 2 thing that fiber does is it helps support gut health and gut-brain connection, okay? Fiber feeds beneficial bacteria in your gut microbiome. Again, without going too far into the weeds here, this basically has an anti-inflammatory effect. It supports the gut lining and communication directly with your brain, and a well-fed gut microbiome supports better mood, better energy, better function, better stress management. And number 3 is volume of food that you can eat, okay? So typically when we're eating higher fiber foods, that means that we're eating more food. You're chewing more food is going into your mouth, etc. You're spending more time eating, which then again keeps you fuller longer. Vegetables, whole grains, legumes, beans, things like that, you can eat a significant amount of these and still feel genuinely full while staying within a reasonable calorie range. This is practically magic when you're in a calorie deficit because you get to eat more and that it's taking up more space. So then you're feeling fuller and not feeling like you're starving inside of a calorie deficit. When protein and fiber are both where they need to be, the experience of eating actually completely changes, right? The constant thinking about food, the afternoon energy crashes, the 9 p.m. cravings, the feeling of restriction, even when you're technically eating enough, all of that starts to improve. Not because you've been more disciplined, right? But because your body is actually getting what it needs. Instead of restricting, we are now providing. I think people truly underestimate how much what they eat affects every other part of their day. When you track your food and feed your body what it actually needs in terms of calories, fats, protein, fiber, etc., here's what's actually changing beyond your physical composition, okay? Your energy is going to improve without the need for caffeine. Your digestion improves and you stop needing to unbutton your jeans at dinner or being terrified of every bathroom visit. Your brain fog starts to lift and you feel more clear every day. And then when you have more energy, you move more. When you move more, your mood improves. When your mood improves, you make better decisions. When you make better decisions, you feel more in control. When you feel more in control, you stop white knuckling your way through every single day and you actually start living it, right? This is a very different cycle than this shame and guilt spiral that we've been talking about and that you're used to at this point, right? Tracking can actually give you your life back. It can actually provide you more instead of restricting you. And that constant background obsession with food, thinking about what you're going to eat next, feeling controlled by cravings, that is largely a symptom of underfueling and blood sugar instability. When you eat enough protein and fiber consistently, most of that food noise starts to go away. And again, not because you got this magic willpower of Arnold Schwarzenegger in his bodybuilding days, but because your body is no longer in a state of depletion and deprivation. But I have a podcast on this exact meal plan strategy that I use with my clients, and it's super effective and again, reduces that decision fatigue. So I hope this video was helpful. If you liked it, make sure you subscribe and tune in next week.